what's also very new and informative. I'm just like kind of Whitney. I'm just excited that we found the platform that this even exists, because I was like, wait, what's happening here? Are they actually discussing these very same things AI had questions about and dare not ask because you're not sure where you're at on the learning curve of it all?
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
How did you find Simply Trade? How did you discover our show?
I found it through, I think it was either somebody that I worked with when I was in Oregon, or Kelly Kimlock, her podcast. I don't know. Yeah. So it was either a cross-reference, and I was like, whoa, there's two people talking about trade. This is insane. Nobody talks about trade. Like, who knew that this existed? Yeah. And I was like, it was just so crazy to me. I was like, this cannot be real. Like, these guys are talking. And so I started to listen, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have found my people. Like, it made me feel so good, because it was just a resource where we were speaking the same language and just talking about current events or other issues. And I'm like, oh, that's how this works together. Just providing a better understanding, because unless you are in a compliant, unless you have, you're in a department where maybe like Nina, there's probably a couple people in your department. There's not really anybody else to talk to. And so just hear the conversation and the subjects, it was like a relief and also a blessing. I was like, oh my gosh.
I learned about you guys at the ICPA conference in San Antonio when you were broadcasting, and I was like, I kid you not, I had not been in the role no more than like about a month. So it was such I was like, I saw you guys, at your booth, and then I was like, oh, Simply Trade. So then I thought like, hey, when I get back home, I'll try to give it a listen. And because I never thought that there would be a podcast about trade. Like, it never dawned on me that there would be podcasts about, trade. Like, I had no idea. None. So once I got back home and I started listening, I just really couldn't stop. I was like, I was on a roll for a while.
I think I learned mine through global training, maybe, and then that got me to the crowd, the platform, because I'm the perpetual student, literally the perpetual student, trying to come back in it from a different angle. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to try this podcast thing, but it'll be over my head. I was convinced it would have been over my head. There was just no way I was going to be able to keep up, and it really took me by surprise. It really did.
So Andy and I, when we first started talking about the show, I actually approached them, and we've probably said on the show many times, but I approached him like 3 years ago, and he just had been busy doing other stuff. And right around March, I guess, of last year, we started talking and formatting the show. How are we going to do this? And we both concluded that what we wanted to do was that we were going to do a show that is as if we're sitting around anywhere and at a bar or having lunch or something with a bunch of trade people and just chatting, you know what I mean? And not have a script, not really. I mean, we haven't scripted anything, and they say, I don't know if any of you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, the Larry David on HBO. Apparently he does his show that way. He has a premise for the show, but no script. And the actors just go with it, which is kind of crazy. But anyway, I don't know if it's true or not. But anyway, I'm just saying that's what we thought we would do, and it's actually worked out well. And we're glad that. I think that also sets the tone in not having to go over your head either. You know what I mean? Because it's not scripted, and we're not using all these fancy words, that are scripted for us and telling us we should say this, and we're just talking to you all. We're okay. Well, we're glad that message is getting through also. So, and like I said, that's part of the goal that Andy and I had.
Attention all trade geeks. The G-Tech conference is coming to Oklahoma City and you won't want to miss it. Mark your calendars for July 30th through August 1st and join us for a jam-packed event with expert-less sessions and networking opportunities. And guess what? The Simply Trade podcast will be recording live at the event. Don't miss this unique chance to be featured on a show and share your insights with fellow trade professionals. We'll see you in Oklahoma City, where trade compliance takes center stage. Go to www.ncbfaa.org and become part of the action.
Well, Lalo's being kind because what he's trying to tell you in another way is I'm too dumb to handle the fancy words. So.
I find that hard to believe, Andy.
Listen, I will say in all sincerity, and I've said this before, Lalo has had more faith in me than I did myself regarding this being, for us hosting the podcast. And I'm like, who wants to listen to some dumb country boy, bloviate on something here? But as we get into it, it is just intriguing to me. Like Larry Hansen's shows you talked about, that was phenomenal. We've had lots of people on there, and I just love, with my past experience, I've actually been in Europe, for example, and have attended meetings with the World Customs Organization, WCO, as well as then, you hear about the WTO, World Trade Organization, and some of the challenges on that. And so as we get into some of these, what does that mean? You hear people talking about policies and all that. Well, I always have to break it down to go, why is this a big deal? And what's it mean to me? And I have to take things through that step and break it down. So, well, this is what it means from an export or an import or, jobs or this economy or that. So hopefully that comes out without a jumbled mess, but I just have to break it down. And I will say that Lalo has done a great job in pulling all of this together. And so as we look at this, I will say, are there any recommendations you would like to see? What would be some of the craziest ideas for a show that you'd like to see?
I would like to hear people talk about what their experience is when they start in a compliance role. Like, what are the things that they look for, and how do you get it up and running? And that's just where I'm at right now. And so it's interesting. So I think the show meets demographics for people who are just coming in. If I was writing an SOP, I'd say, listen to Simply Trade. This will help you get an understanding for terms and kind of what's going on, and pick an episode that you want to delve more in depth with. And then there's people who have been in the industry like yourselves for 25 or however many years. And so that intersection is amazing, right? Because you're bringing that knowledge for people like us who are just coming into it, and it makes it more approachable, and it removes the barrier. So, but for me right now, like, just how am I going the right way? Like, are we doing this right? Like, I think this is right until somebody tells me it's not. Like, this is what we're going to do.
What's also very new and informative, I'm just like kind of Whitney. I'm just excited that we found the platform that this even exists, because I was like, wait, what's happening here? Are they actually discussing these very same things AI had questions about and dare not ask because you're not sure where you're at on the learning curve of it all? So, but it's just all very new and very fascinating. But I could see a time where I your listeners get invested enough where they're like, yeah, I think I need to hear a little bit more about this.
I guess kind of bridging the gap, because even though like I can understand them, but sometimes I feel like the average person just may not understand it. Maybe have some, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to think of
maybe like fundamental or basic
like a little more
trade. Like, you're just coming in, maybe you're just like coming in, you heard about trade and you just learned about it. And so you just what are the basics? Like these are the terms. These terms mean this. For the longest time, 3461 and a 7501. What's the difference? Like, wait, what's the difference between an entry and an entry summary? Maybe just like the basic things that somebody who's just coming in and helps them understand the language and what these things mean.
And also, like, if you had an episode, and maybe you have, and I could have missed it, but like, a lot of people may not know even some of the careers that you can have in brokerage. Like, I like hearing the backstories of how a person, they got into the business and some of the jobs that they've had. Like, that's what I've been doing. Like with some of the LinkedIn's, I would go in, I'm like, oh, well, they started XYZ. Sometimes I feel like because I kind of entered the industry late in the game, like sometimes, I may not have the confidence that I can, go further in the, trade compliance. So it'd be nice if there's like someone that maybe started a little later in life.
Oh, there's so much that, I mean, career-wise, there are so many different things, especially what I've just heard from all of y'all with your background. Here's the one thing. A lot of people will get into compliance and then they're thinking, well, I'm very limited and whatever. But I can tell you this, Teresa, your sales background, as you were just talking about. Well, guess what? There's a lot of things that you can do to translate compliance things into more simplistic things, just using your sales skills to be able to communicate within the company. Other things of everything what you guys just did, understand this. Any experience and training that you had is not going to waste. So it's unbelievable what you can do. And then you take what you've got and then be able to network with some other folks so you can come alongside. And here's what's key. Coming alongside other areas, because just like you're in compliance and going, holy crap, I got to build this from the ground up, or am I heading in the right direction? Because like you just said, many people out there are one-man shops, okay, or one-person shops. And as you're out there, it's like, okay, guess what? There's going to be other areas where I guarantee you there's going to be leaders, and they won't admit it, and they're going to be looking at it and going, no, I'm fine. I got it under control. But if you get them away and get a beer or something with them and a cup of coffee and you start talking to them, they're scared to death. Well, guess what? Two people walking individually on railroad tracks, you're going to fall and whatever. But if you reach over and grab somebody's arm and they reach up and grab your arm, you can walk on those rails very quickly and down together. So two together is better. The sum is greater than the individuals. So I'm just telling you, your experience is unreal.
Yeah, I agree with Andy.
Lila, I would say maybe it would be just having come in off the exam, right? Exam prep. Maybe that you guys recap the exam, or, I think that would be beneficial. Just for people to understand. I was so discouraged because this is my third time taking it. I was like, I said, maybe trade is not for me. Like, maybe this is not for me. Like, and somebody said, don't give up. You can do this. Don't give up. But just discussing that with people, right? And I think most people know that it's not an exam you pass on the first time typically. Like, there are people who do, but just reiterating that after the exam, like, hey, you may have to take it a couple of times. Don't give up. This is what we understand. Or I don't know, just to recap that when it happens, because I think that there's some people who have passed it. And then there's others like myself and Teresa that for myself, I was like, I don't think this is for me. I don't think trade is for me.
That would be a great show.
That would be great.
Now that I think about
that
it.
would be a great platform because because in that case, and I'm shocked at how many people are taking it. Like those that have been there forever, attorneys, compliance. Nina, you should join us and just take it. Also, it's like, I'm just saying, I'm trying to get everyone to take it. But anyway, it's just mind-boggling. Even sitting in the room waiting to get called, I'm like, God, if this person's, I don't stand a chance, or then it's just amazing. I agree because it's important.
So one of the goals that we've been trying to accomplish, like moving forward, and as you all heard, we hit our 50th episode, which we were like, wow, we were blown away because we anticipated having one show a week. That would have been a year, when you hit your 52nd show, but we did it in 8 months. So we're like, okay, cool. So we're doing something right. But the thing is that we started to reevaluate how the show is, how we're putting it together. And we thought, okay, we've had a lot of service providers, for example, attorneys and consultants, software providers, logistics providers, et cetera, which are great. They have a lot of good information. So then I started reaching out to, and I think this would address a lot of what you guys are saying as far as, like, am I going the right direction and putting my import manual together, or my export manual, or my compliance manual, is having an actual practitioner. So here's the challenge that we have, is that a lot of them need to get it cleared with their legal or somebody, and so just so you all know, that's the direction. We do want to have a lot more practitioners. I have like 6 or 7 in the pipeline there, but they just can't get on, because they're still trying to get it cleared. Number 2, we're trying to get government officials to come on the show. That would be great if we can have someone not necessarily disclose anything that the government puts them at a disadvantage, but at least say, you should reach out to us this way or that way. You know what I mean? And have you understand. So again, because of conflicts of interest, they are still trying to work that out. And then lastly, we did talk to some people who have told us, well, that's nice that you talked to us about the, Whitney, you talked about the AI for classification. We had another one that was AI for forced labor. We had 2 of them, in fact. There were AI for forced labor. Well, thank you for talking about it, but can you show it to me? So we're actually thinking of doing a visual version of our podcast and calling it Demo Day, for example, where we just show you the software. And so we're thinking that might, I don't know if those resonate or not, but anyway, so that's where we're trying to do, or where we're trying to go with the show, and we hope that'll work. But I love the idea of like a post-exam show. I know somebody who on the day of the exam, she has a session and gathers everybody in a room, virtual room. And so she starts going through all the questions, because you all take the question sheet and you take it home, and the whole group just starts going through it, and how well you did on that day based on a consensus, not based on the real answers. On the answer key, but based on a consensus. So that would actually be cool if we could be the fly on the wall in that session, right? That would be cool. I don't know. So, but I like that idea. I do like that idea, and maybe I'll try to still get somebody on the show to talk about this most recent exam, especially because it was 5%, pass rate, 5 point whatever, and then maybe even before the next one, like, okay, this is it. This is crunch time, guys. Next week is the exam. Let's do this. You know what I mean? Or something like that. But yeah, I do like those ideas.
That's a common place we're all going to be at or are in when we're taking that exam, irregardless of your background.
And then what do you do after the exam? Like then what, how do you structure your life after the exam, after you've been studying? You just don't even have to think about plans, because you're like, oh, I just have to study. That's what I have to go to work and I have to study, and figure everything else out. But just post exam and, moving forward, I think to Teresa's point, it just makes it like we're all in it together, which I don't know anybody in my immediate area who's taking it, right? So just having a place where people are talking about it, you're like, okay, I'm not alone. Everybody's feeling this way. Like, here's, it just makes it more of a community feel.
And Lalo, and throw in there those that have been through there and passed it. Not just
right.
All of us.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially with Nina being so new and up and coming, things to look forward to, avenues, to explore. So.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I just want to invite people to connect. I'll definitely be reaching out to you ladies on LinkedIn, and really thank you for hosting a show that removes the barrier and, just making it more real, like Nina said, right? Like making it more real. And so it's approachable. Like you're not stupid for having a question or whatever that is, because nobody really knows. Even people have been doing it for 20 years. So I think that's good to maintain going into trade and further building your career.
Great. Thank you. How about you, Teresa?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Whitney's saying. Just thanks for having the format, for allowing, those of us that are learning or, in all levels of this, of the industry. At first I was like, oh yeah, that seems like a great, fun idea. And then all of a sudden it was like, ooh, probably not. You start hearing who's a compliance person, who's a broker, and you're like, maybe not. And then it turns out that, in the end, you're pretty much part of the same community. So it's very helpful. Very helpful.
Sure.
Great structure.
Awesome. And Nina, do you have anything?
I think Whitney and Teresa both said it all. I just want to thank you just so much for what you guys are doing.
Awesome.
You just don't realize just how helpful it is. And, just know that you are reaching people, and we appreciate what you're doing. And I just look forward to, your next episodes and seeing what you guys have out there. And thank you for inviting me as well to speak.
Oh, no, sure.
Thank you so much.
Listen, I just greatly appreciate y'all. The one thing I was going to say is if you can, on the exam, one of the things I was going to ask you is if we took the test, here's the explanation, this is what you're looking for kind of stuff. Would that be a good show for y'all?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, take the exam, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Anything.
Well, I will say this, and Whitney, I'm like, if you get any of y'all, if you get your scores back and we start going through, feel free to reach out, and I'd love to see, what some of the questions you may have missed. Keep in mind, I've gone to take the test 45 days before the test. I personally went to and tried to study, and I scored. I think I missed it by 2 points, but the questions I missed were classification, and I'm not a classifier, but I achieved what I wanted, which is a working knowledge of the regulations. I didn't need the license. I was like, nice to have had it, but it was like, guess what? I literally have been in situations where I've debated issues with customs and with customs attorneys, and I, knowing the regulations. So I've got a working knowledge of it. You need to look at it. If it's a requirement of your job, then we'll figure out ways to help you get through that. But anyway.
Well, thank you all. Thank you very much, Andy. We really appreciate this.
Yeah, well, and Lalo, I know this is that, ladies, you've made us proud as peacocks. So I'm telling you, we'd be strutting around the barnyard here with all these comments. Y'all have been gracious and fantastic. So we really, really appreciate y'all.
You got it.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.
Andy, I would have your producer edit out that last part, because we're not going to believe this "I'm as dumb as a box of rocks" comment, right, Whitney?
Right? That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, wait a minute.
You just want us, Andy. Have her edit that out, because I have no more for you. I'm in Team Lalo. You are not as dumb as a box of rocks. Whitney and I are struggling here. We're like drowning here, describing the water. With the 45 pages that I missed too.
Missed it by two. I